Oh, it looks like it's working. I got the
Oh,
thing.
there we go. Oh, perfect. Oh, excellent connection. That's great. Okay,
Oh,
so
we'd love to see that.
we'll be, yes. Now everyone just has to see the same thing. Okay, so, and I will also probably shut my screen off to let you sort of be the person, but when I introduce myself, I will keep my screen on, and then so people are, so I don't have to look interested all the time, but so that's all good. Yeah. Let's see. I'll go ahead and I'll hit in just a minute. Perfect. Well, welcome to everyone who's joining now. Hopefully we'll have some people on the YouTube joining as well, but we'll give everyone maybe about a minute or two to join, and then we'll get started. Good. So we have some people joining on the YouTube stream, which is great. Welcome. We'll get started in just a moment, maybe at 12:01 or so. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. As people join, I'll let everyone in, but for now, I will go ahead and introduce, and actually, I'm going to start over because I'm going to record the meeting. All right, well, there we go. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And if you're watching later, thank you for watching this recording, and thank you whatever way you are joining. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself, and then I'll hand it off to our presenter, Maddie. But I am Allison Pollock. I am the program manager for RVA Now, which, as you may know, is a program of Chamber RVA that's all about connecting students in the Richmond region to what's great about Richmond, what some job opportunities are, why it's a great place to work after you graduate, and also preparing you for the world of careers. So we today are going to be talking about benefits, helping you guys get ready to start those conversations, whether you're starting your internship or a full-time job. It can be very intimidating, and we want to make sure that you have all the skills. So I will hand it off to Maddie. She works at Mercer and has very graciously prepared a presentation that's really starting to, fill the foundation of what benefits can be like, and what what knowledge you might not have. So we'll have a little while of the presentation, then we'll have an opportunity for questions later. Definitely feel free to ask throughout the presentation, whether that's on the YouTube chat or in the Zoom chat, and we can make sure those are answered. We might not take your full hour, but if you have enough questions, we might. So I'll take the chance now to pass it off to Maddie, who will introduce herself and get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Allison. I am Maddie McGeehan. I am a health consulting analyst at Mercer, and I've been with Mercer for 1.5 years now. So for those of you that don't know, Mercer is one of the largest human resources consulting companies out there, and I sit specifically within our health and benefits practice here in Richmond. So benefits are really my bread and butter. I deal with it every day, in and out. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks so much for the opportunity to have me. I hope you all just take away a little nugget of knowledge that will help you throughout your job search. I know that it's very intimidating and it's really difficult to navigate the challenging world of benefits, and it wasn't that long ago that I was in that spot. So I sympathize, and I hope that this helps. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Apologies if you see me looking a couple different ways. I have three-headed screen here. I'm trying to navigate to the presentation. Okay. Can everyone see the benefits 101
Yep.
page.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Just figured I should confirm with how finicky technology can be. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. So we're just going to start out just introducing the background of benefits, just at a high level, 10,000-foot overview of, kind of with what the state of benefits are today. I'm going to go ahead and walk through some definitions as I find, just really understanding the nuts and bolts of what certain terms mean really helps, create an understanding of what we're dealing with. And then we're going to go ahead and walk through the types of plans that are available. And then finally, and this is probably what everybody is, most interested in learning about, is choosing a plan and what that looks like and how to choose a plan that works best for you, using the definitions and types of plans and, the kind of foundational knowledge that we're going to walk through at the beginning of this presentation to make those decisions for yourselves. And then we're going to open it up to questions afterwards. Although, as Allison said at the top, feel free to use the chat or raise your hand if you have a question in the middle, and we can totally stop and dive into whatever. This is a pretty intimate group, so feel free to just go off of your mute if you have a question. Okay. So starting out with an overview. So you all probably already know, just, through your background knowledge, that most benefits are offered through your employer. And this is, it's always been a question for me as to why navigating health insurance is even a part of finding a job anyway. Why are we even here? So for a little background on that, this is kind of an accident of history. So with the wage controls of World War II, legislation created a tax incentive for allowing benefits to be provided to employees on a pre-tax basis. So, ever since that point, however many decades ago, this has kind of been the trend. And ever since then, it's, expected that employers are really to provide health insurance and other benefits to their employees. So now those reasons, have evolved into attracting the best talent, retaining the best talent, and minimizing employee turnover, keeping a healthy and productive workforce in general. It helps build employee morale, maintain companies' reputation. And, to my point earlier, this is really an expectation at this point. So just to level set on why we're even discussing this in the first place. So who is eligible for benefits? As an active full-time employee, you will be eligible for benefits. So these rules, can vary a bit based on your employer, as they have some discretion as to who is eligible. So you'll see here the second bullet: spouses and same-sex or opposite domestic partners. Some employers choose not to cover domestic partners. That is, really a choice that aligns with their values. So it's important to understand fully who is eligible under your employer's plan as a first step to really analyzing the plan options available to you. Dependents are also eligible for benefits, sometimes part-time employees, independent contractors, retirees, employees on leave of absence. Again, all of this depends, specifically on your employer, although this is, just the types of groups and populations that would be eligible. So again, important to dig into that and see what your employer specifically allows. Excuse me. So what started with just health insurance has really evolved into other benefit offerings as well. Going back to this is now an expectation that employees have, and it's really transformed into a whole well-being approach. A lot of people in general expect their employers to take care of them, and as you can see, this is kind of it's a big undertaking for employers to kind of bear this responsibility. And it is a significant expense to employers, and this is something that they really care about as a part of your whole benefits offering package. So it's important to not think about your health insurance benefits in a silo. It's a part of your total rewards compensation package. So in addition to health insurance, there's also welfare like life insurance, short and long-term disability, special risk, voluntary benefits, which are usually 100% employee paid, such as, other disability, critical illness, pet insurance, the fun stuff, home auto, legal. So lots of different options, and this will really depend on the employer's values and what they choose to offer to their employees. So we are about to move on to the next session and really getting into the nitty-gritty of definitions, but are there any questions as of now? Okay, I will take silence as a no. Let's go ahead and jump in. So there are a few things that we need to do to, really equip ourselves with the tools needed to choose the right plan for your needs. And the first of which is really just understanding basic benefits vocabulary. So there are really four main components to any medical insurance plan. The first of which is your deductible. So this is the out-of-pocket expense that an insured must pay in a plan year before the medical plan begins to share the cost of the claim. So this is 100% what you are paying. So for example, $750 per person. If this is your deductible, you have to pay all of your medical expenses, when you see the doctor, go to the hospital, whatever, up until that $750 before any cost sharing with your employer kicks in. So the second term is copayment. This is a fixed dollar amount that an insured pays for covered health-related services. And this is usually paid at the point of service, which is when the service is received. So when you're at the doctor's office, these are your nice, predictable, flat payments that a lot of people like because, it's easy to estimate your medical spend. So for example, this is, $25 for a doctor visit, $45 for a specialist visit. These are copayments. Coinsurance, on the other hand, is not a fixed amount. This is a cost sharing agreement that is based on a percentage. So coinsurance is the share of cost for covered health related services. Again, this is a percentage of the allowed amount, and this applies typically after the deductible is met. So again, you have to pay up into your deductible, going to this example, the $750. And then once you meet that, that is at the point in which this coinsurance kicks in, and then your employer will take care of the 80% and you only have to take care of the 20% of the cost of service. And then finally, the other piece to this is the out-of-pocket maximum. So this is your absolute annual limit on the amount of money that you will pay for health insurance outside of your premiums. So, you pay your premiums every single month. That's not applicable here, but this is, the total amount of money that you would spend out of pocket if you, for your medical visits. So after this maximum is reached, all covered health services are paid in full by your health plan for the rest of that plan year. So the example here is $3,000 per person, sometimes a little bit more than that. It can get a little bit hefty, but this is your absolute threshold. You won't be spending more out of pocket that year. So the deductible, the copays, the coinsurance, those all go towards your out-of-pocket max. And these are separate to your premiums, which you pay every month just to have your insurance. You could pay your premiums every month and not utilize your insurance at all, but you still have to make those premiums. These expenses are expenses that you would incur when you go to receive services. So I hope that's clear. I hope that's clear. Are there any questions on any of these terms before we dive into some of the specifics on deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums? Okay. Oh, I see a hand.
Hi, I had a question. So I always thought that you would have a deductible, and I guess my question is, you have to pay off your deductible before you can be eligible for a copayment or a co-insurance, even if you have, even if your employer provides health insurance for you, you have to pay off that deductible. So say if your deductible is $750, you have to pay that off first before your employer is able to assist you with anything medically related, right?
Yes, yep, your understanding is correct. So your co-payments, that would go to the deductible sometimes, kind of depending. So yes, you have to reach that deductible amount really before anything kicks in. So yeah, it is sometimes frustrating for employees because they're saying I'm paying this much for premiums and I still have to meet my deductible. Sometimes that deductible can be really high, sometimes it's lower depending on the plan design. So yeah, that is definitely a great point. And I think your understanding is correct.
Thank you. And I guess what kind of language, I mean, is it, I know like on your insurance card, like your deductible or like it has like percentages and stuff like that. Like how can you know
Mhm.
what deductible might be lower or what plan might be better? Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but that's kind of like the next question that I have.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And I think once we get through a couple more terms, I think we'll get to that, and feel free to jump in and let me know if once we get to that point, if you feel like I haven't, fully answered your question, and then we can dig into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. You're welcome. And thank you for your participation while getting questions. Okay, so with out-of-pocket maximums and deductibles, there is a little bit of a nuance. So going back to earlier about the eligibility, spouses can be eligible to be on your plan, dependents. So this creates tiers in your coverage. You can have employee only coverage where you're just paying to insure yourself. You can have employee plus spouse, which covers you and your spouse, employee plus children, family. You kind of see how that goes. So within the individual and family tiers, there are kind of two distinctions when it comes to the out-of-pocket maximums and the deductibles. So there's the individual tier, which is kind of, self-explanatory. That's for the individual. Once the individual meets your out-of-pocket maximum or deductible amount, then the medical plan pays in full. That's pretty straightforward. But when it comes to family, there are these two concepts. One is a true family and one is an embedded family. So a true family means that the entire family out-of-pocket deductible or out-of-pocket maximum or deductible, it applies to both of these terms, must be met before the medical plan pays in full for any member. Whereas in the embedded family, when any one individual in the family meets the amount, the medical plan pays in full for that individual. So unlike the embedded family deductible plans, with the true family, there's no limit on the amount one member can pay towards the family deductible. So for example, if the subscriber insured employee meets the entire family deductible, then the entire family moves on to co-pays and co-insurance. And this is favorable because this means that your dependents don't have to meet their own separate deductible. And this can be very burdensome, going back to your point earlier about it can be burdensome to have to meet that deductible. Imagine having to meet the deductible for each individual in your family. Allison has to meet her deductible for her services. Allison's spouse maybe, has to meet their deductible for their services. So you can see how that can add up to be a lot more versus whereas the embedded is kind of once and done. Or the true is once and done. So I know that's really confusing. It has taken me so long to, really fully grasp that. So are there any questions on the nuances between true family and embedded family? Okay. And finally, in terms of terminology, this one is a bit more self-explanatory. There's in-network providers and there's out-of-network providers. So for in-network, it's exactly how it sounds. These are facilities and providers, doctors, hospitals, suppliers who are contracted with the insurance carrier to be a part of that network, that specific network. So these insurance carriers make deals with these providers and these facilities to have discounts. And so that's why they're part of the network, like club, essentially. So if you're in the club, in the network club, these services are provided at a reduced cost to members and the plan. So it's preferred to have an in-network provider as opposed to an out-of-network provider, because these discounts aren't available and typically results in a higher cost. So who are the major medical carriers that have these networks? There are 4 main national healthcare carriers: Aetna, Anthem, Cigna, and United Healthcare, otherwise known as UHC. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these. These are the big ones. There are also regional healthcare vendors, such as Humana, Kaiser, although Kaiser is around the country, they have individual regional divisions. So for example, the one for Virginia is Kaiser Mid-Atlantic. Excuse me. So there are two kind of different approaches that the medical carriers, also known as vendors, can take in their strategies. Okay, so that's the basics of terminology and just level setting on the benefits space and the benefits world in general. Are there any questions about what we've covered so far, or are we ready to move on to the specific types of plans that are available and put some of these terms to work? I think maybe seeing how these fit into these plans might help people's understanding. Yes, go ahead.
I had a question. So how does an employer decide like what like people to carry? Like, this employer carries Anthem, but like this employer, carries Humana. We don't really have a choice when we start a job. It's whatever they, it's whoever they have. So how do an employer decide they want to carry that type of insurance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that goes back to these network discounts. So a lot of the times the network discounts are regional. So in Virginia, Anthem has a lot of the best, deepest network discounts with the providers in the area. So if an employer has a large population in Virginia, maybe it makes sense to have Anthem be the carrier because that will provide the most financially beneficial providers and networks. And sometimes the approach is that employers will take one of these national carriers, such as, we'll just stick with Anthem, and let's say they have a population out in California where maybe Anthem isn't as strong, and they see that, okay, a lot of our employees go to providers that aren't in the Anthem network. How do we solve for this without making our employees see a different doctor, right? Because, once you have a relationship with your doctor, employees don't like to leave that. They would prefer to stay with it if they can. So oftentimes what employers will do will maybe offer one of these regional vendors as a supplement if they're particularly strong in that region. So for example, maybe an employer will have Anthem nationally broadly for their employees, and then we'll offer Kaiser California, and maybe many of the employees in California will opt for Kaiser because it's better for them specifically being in California and their personal provider is in that network where it might not be in the Anthem network. So long-winded way to say it really depends on one, where an employer's population is, like where employees primarily live, and two, what the network discounts look like for each of the carriers in that location.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a great question, though. So types of plans. So back to Salisa's point, you don't really get that much of a choice in what carrier you pick because, your employer ultimately picks that. But hopefully you'll have a little bit more choice in what type of plan that you have. So there are three main types of plans that you will encounter, and all of these cover basic services in different ways. So they all cover 100% coverage for preventative care. So that is, seeing your doctor for your annual checkup. That's covered 100% by all of these plans due to the Affordable Care Act. However, these differ in other ways. So they all include a network of providers, kind of going back to each carrier will have a network. All of them will have in-network. However, not all of them have out-of-network providers. So HMOs, health maintenance organizations, do not offer coverage for out-of-network providers. They are really strict in that it has to be in their network that they have picked. And that's just one of the stipulations of this type of plan. So kind of going with that, with the HMO, they are a little bit stricter, and this comes out in a different way as well. You have to use your primary care physician really as your guide to the rest of your other care needs. So your primary care physician would have to refer you to see a specialist. So your PCP is really the gatekeeper, and they refer you to all your other specialists and any other needs that you could have. So the HMO is really, really strict. Although people sometimes like it because it is typically copay based, which, going back to the definitions, those are fixed, those fixed payments. So it's really predictable, and people often like that. I'll skip this tax advantaged account piece and kind of circle back to that at the end. So moving on to the preferred provider organization, PPO, again, 100% coverage for preventive exams, also includes a network. And unlike the HMO, this is a bit more flexible. You are able to go to these out-of-network providers. It will be probably at a higher cost, going back to that definition slide, but you still have the option to see those out-of-network providers if you choose so. Your primary care physician is not required. They're not gatekeeping. You have a little bit more flexibility in this type of plan. Although, it is recommended that you would have a primary care physician. Just in general, I would recommend that to anybody, although it's not required. So PPO is a bit flexible. And the PPOs are typically a combination of both these copays. So you would probably typically have a copay to go see your PCP or a specialist, or maybe your prescription drugs, and then co-insurance for other things. So maybe a hospital visit would be a co-insurance. So with the PPO, it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's kind of the in-between. And then on this far end, we have the high deductible health plan, sometimes also known as the consumer directed health plan. So again, 100% coverage for preventive care, includes a network of providers. Like the PPO, it provides coverage for out-of-network providers. You'll see that the main distinction from the PPO is that this is primarily just deductible and co-insurance. So this is going to be the most unpredictable plan because you don't have those fixed copays. You don't know, well, if I see my doctor, it'll be a $25. No, it will be up to your deductible and then the co-insurance afterwards. So you might be thinking that, wow, this high deductible health plan doesn't really sound that great. The thing is, the high deductible health plan has this tax advantaged account compatible, which is really key. And this is kind of going to be what we're digging into for this next part of our time here. So are there any questions just on these three types of plans in general before we dive into the tax advantage accounts and, get into the nuts and bolts of this high deductible health plan?
I had a question from the YouTube chat, which might be answered later, but they're asking about a health savings plan and where that fits
awesome.
in.
That is a perfect segue, Allison.
Lovely. I thought it might be.
Yeah, that was a perfect time to chime in with that. So we're digging in to the consumer directed health plan and health savings account, because the consumer direct CDHP, HDHP, used somewhat interchangeably. The consumer directed portion is really encompassing the tax advantage spending accounts with this piece too. So this is really what balances out the other characteristics of the high deductible health plan that might be unfavorable, is that this is the only type of plan that is compatible with these tax advantage spending accounts. So the two that are compatible with the high deductible health plans are the health savings account and the health reimbursement account. I'm going to spend the majority of the time on the health savings account because this is most popular, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinion, it's most beneficial. Though if you do have any questions on the health reimbursement account, we can talk about that at the end. And just more broadly, out of tax advantage spending accounts, there are also these flexible spending accounts. This is not only compatible with the high deductible health plan. These are compatible with the PPOs and HMOs as well, as long as an employer provides it. But we're going to be spending the most of our time on this health savings account. So this health savings account is a tax advantage medical savings account and retirement savings vehicle, which I think is a portion that often can get overlooked. So the health savings account is one of the most crucial tools to really owning your own health insurance expenses because it offers triple tax savings. Number one, your contributions to your health savings account are pre-tax. So that gets taken out of your paycheck, just like your 401k, and, gets put into the account before you see it. The second way in which it's advantageous for tax reasons is that the interest earned on the account is tax-free. So once you reach a certain amount in your health savings account, you can invest these funds and it can, accumulate over time. And this is what's really powerful because this interest is tax-free. And lastly, when you go to withdraw these funds for qualified medical expenses, the withdrawals are tax-free as well. So those are three areas in which you had the opportunity to be taxed and you weren't. So there's really a lot of savings that go into the health savings account. I would say this is probably like the number one piece of information I would hope that you all take away from this session, is that the health savings account is really crucial and makes a difference in the funds that are available to you to manage your health insurance. So going to eligibility, unlike the FSA, you have to have a high deductible health plan to be eligible for the health savings account. So that is a requirement. The health savings account is employee owned. So this is very important because when you go to change jobs, your health savings account can change jobs with you. It's not owned by your employer. They can't take away the funds. It is 100% your account, your money to use. For contributions, you are able to contribute to your health savings account, of course, up to $3,850 for an individual and $7,750 for a family. So that is a lot of money. And these IRS annual limits were actually just increased this year due to a lot of the inflationary pressure. So it is crucial to take advantage of these contribution limits. So within those contribution limits also includes any contributions that your employer makes. So a lot of employers will also contribute to your HSA. Not all of them, but a lot of them will, because they also wanted to encourage their employees to contribute these as well. So oftentimes you'll see that it comes in the form of a HSA match. So similar to a 401k, your employer will match sometimes dollar for dollar. Sometimes they'll give you seed money. So they just give you, maybe $500, no questions asked, to your HSA if you have these high deductible health plans. So the employer contributions vary per employer, but most do offer contributions, and some of them are really favorable. Funds roll over from year to year, which is particularly advantageous. So it is not use it or lose it. You are able to take it into your retirement as well. So going back to how this is a vehicle for retirement savings. It's no secret that one of the biggest expenses that retirees have are medical expenses, right? So instead of having to draw from your 401k or, your Roth IRA or any other retirement, like specifically retirement savings vehicle for these medical expenses, you can tap into your HSA, which is specifically for qualified medical expenses. So maybe I should take a minute to, go into detail on what is a qualified expense. So it's a more expansive list than you would think. It's the deductibles, it's those co-payments. But if you go on the IRS website, you can see that there are a couple of things that you wouldn't exactly think would be qualified, but can be, if you can make the case for it. So it's important to, check that out and see what the options are, because there are some things that you wouldn't think would qualify that you can actually use with your health savings account. The one drawback I would say to the health savings account is the non-qualified withdrawals. So you are able to withdraw, however, you will have a 20% tax penalty. So hopefully you just don't have to do that. Hopefully you can save it for the qualified medical expenses and let this grow, so you can tap into this when you retire, because hopefully medical expenses are limited in youth, and we can, really spend your younger years contributing to the HSA, so that way in your older years you can draw from it. Because, as I said, the funds roll over from year to year, so there's no pressure to use it and lose it. Because if you don't, you'll lose it. So just to compare with the flexible spending account real quick, because a lot of the advantages of the HSA are not present with the FSA, which is what makes it particularly advantageous. So the FSA still is a pre-tax contribution vehicle. However, it's a use it or lose it type of situation. So there is up to a $550 carryover a year, but that is not that much if you were contributing, several thousand. So that's not, it's not the ideal situation that you want to be losing money that's on the table. So just be wary about that with flexible spending accounts. The qualified payments are pretty similar. However, it is a little bit more limited than the HSA. And one other thing to highlight about the FSA is that it is not portable. So you cannot take this with you when you retire or when you move employers. So that is another just reason to highlight how advantageous the HSA is, especially compared to some of the other options with the flexible or with the other options with the spending accounts. Okay, so any questions on spending accounts before we spend really the last 15 minutes on what goes into choosing a plan?
One quick thing was, what are some examples of some unexpected qualified expenses for HSAs? What are maybe one or two examples of something that you wouldn't expect to be able to use that on?
I knew that was going to come up, and when I was saying that, I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, I can't remember if they just changed this rule or not. So something that I was thinking of earlier, and I would have to double check to confirm if this is still qualified, is like over the counter like bandages, like first aid types of things.
Oh, interesting.
Qualified. Yeah, exactly. Like that qualifies as a health expense, which I guess makes sense, but that's just what my point was, that it's not everything that would come directly from like a doctor's office visit or, a hospital visit. It can be basic things too, like everyday household items like Band-Aids and, stuff like that. So, but I would want to double check to confirm on the IRS website to make sure that's still applicable, because I know they just recently changed some of the rules for 2023. But that was what I had in mind when I said that.
Interesting.
Okay, so choosing a plan, moment we've all been waiting for. This is really important because studies show we do not choose the best plan for us. Research indicates that many employees choose these low deductible plans like these HMOs and PPOs over the high deductible plans at an expense of over $1,000 a year is what it ends up costing a lot of people. Not to say that these lower deductible plans are a good choice for some people, but certainly not everybody, and typically not younger, healthier people. And this is a common misconception, which is why it's so important to educate ourselves on, the intricacies of these plans and what works best for you and your individual needs based on your own health utilization. So to put all this to life, because I know we've been talking high level and kind of theoretically, this is an example of, some sample plan designs with those three major plans that we talked about earlier. So you'll notice that the HMO looks super appealing. You're like, oh, wow, no deductible, no co-insurance, these nice fixed copays for your primary care physician and your specialist and low out-of-pocket limits. Like that looks really nice. It's, bummer that you can't access out-of-network providers, but, my primary care physician is in network anyway, so that doesn't bother me. That's a lot of people's thinking, and that's true for a lot of people. You can understand why these HMOs are attractive. Similar with the PPOs, it looks kind of like the middle ground. Okay, so the deductible is $500 for individual, $1,000 for family. That's pretty reasonable. The co-insurance is less than the high deductible health plan, but it's still a co-insurance as opposed to a fixed copay. Although there are fixed copays for the primary care physician and specialist, and this co-insurance may only apply to an emergency room visit, or maybe only these out-of-network benefits. And look, there's a middle of the road out-of-pocket limit. So oftentimes people think, okay, the PPO is this middle of the road. And then on the flip side, this high deductible health plan looks terrible compared to the other two types of plans. It's got the highest deductible, it's got the highest out-of-pocket limit, it has the highest co-insurance, it's unpredictable. So you can understand the thinking that people have when they're faced with these three options. They're like, oh, okay, it seems obvious. HMO is the best, PPO is middle, and then the CDHP is the worst. So you can really understand where that statistic comes from and how people end up spending more money than they probably should. This is the flip side of the plan design image, is the health insurance cost image. What do the premiums actually look like? So these are the premiums, and you'll notice down here, look, HMO is the most expensive. So yes, the plan designs are the most favorable here, but you are definitely paying for it in your contributions. Not only is it, HMO and PPO are the most expensive. I guess I'll highlight both of them because they're pretty similar compared to these other two. So you'll see that these are the most expensive, not only in the raw dollars, but also in the contribution as a percentage of premium, meaning your employer is contributing 76% and you're contributing 24%. The 24% is a lot higher than this HSA eligible high deductible health plan, in which the employee is only contributing 17%. And look, this also, not only is this a lower percentage, this is also a lower dollar figure too, only $109 a month on average for premium, as opposed to $176 for a PPO or $150 for an HMO. So I hope it makes sense that, these plan designs the plan designs can sometimes be an illusion and make plans look cheaper than they actually are, because when you consider the premium in combination with your out-of-pocket expenses, sometimes the picture doesn't look like what you would think it would look like. And so that's just for individual. For this family tier, you can see the difference becomes even more apparent, and this can get really expensive. Like the difference between, $413 for an HSA versus a $627 a month plan for a PPO is a huge difference. So it's really crucial to understand the disparities between the premiums. And that is why it translates to, the differing levels of richness of these plans. So before I get to that, one last thought before we move on from this is that it's important to think of your health insurance of having two levers. There's your premium, which is your monthly cost here, which you pay every single month, no matter what, no matter if you go to the doctor every single day or if you don't go to the doctor at all, there's your premium cost. And then there are your out of pocket, point of service costs, which are these plan design costs. So if you think about how often you go to the doctor, if you don't go to the doctor very often, it might be better for you to pay less each month with an HSA eligible high deductible healthcare plan, because it doesn't matter if there's a 20% coinsurance or this really high deductible, if you're not even meeting that deductible. If you don't go to the doctor at all, or only for your preventive care, which is covered at 100%, it doesn't really matter that you have a high deductible and you are subject to be paying more, because you have to balance that with the risk and your previous utilization. So for someone who has maybe a chronic illness, visits or maybe is prone to injuries, frequently visits the doctor, maybe for this individual it would be better to have a richer plan like a PPO or an HMO, and pay a little bit more upfront each month on the premium, because that when you go to your doctor and receive care at the point of service, you're paying less. You're only paying the $20 copay. So it's important to think about you as an individual and your healthcare needs when you're making these decisions, because not everybody's going to look the same. For an individual, you might benefit more from a HMO plan, and your colleague might benefit better from a PPO plan. It really depends on you. So it's important to think about your own situation and not take the advice of, oh, PPO plans are always better, or oh, the HDHP plans are always so expensive. Look at those deductibles. It's important to think to yourself, no, it's not always what it looks like on the surface, because for me, this is the better plan. So
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So what would your recommendation be for someone who has to see a counselor every week? I'm young, I may not need to see the doctor for like a physical injury or like a physical pain, but I may have to see someone on a weekly basis. Are you saying that the HSA may not be the best fit for me because of that? How would I go about figuring that out?
Yeah, it may not, and that is when it goes to these like specific plan designs and what each specific employer would have. So this is just like the basic, like, for PCP copay, specialist copay. Oftentimes like your specific plan will have like a behavioral health maybe, and maybe the behavioral health PPO plan will have copays. So you're like, oh, great, it's only a $25 copay. And you like that predictability because that's a service that you will need consistently. So maybe that's the best fit for you, but not all plans will have a copay for behavioral health. It might have a coinsurance, and maybe you think to yourself, oh, I don't like that. I want to have more predictability. So it really goes down to looking at your own situation and specific to the actual plan, which I know it doesn't help, but once you have actual plans in front of you, I think it will be easier to quantify that, and see what will work best for you. Because it also depends on the deductible limit. Let's say, that you go bi-weekly. So with that, you will meet your deductible halfway through the year. Okay, well, great. Now you're, if you have like a really low co-insurance, let's say this co-insurance was 0%. I have some clients that have plans that like, okay, the deductible is really high. The deductible for an individual might be $3,000, but their co-insurance is 0. So once you meet your $3,000, like your employer is picking up the tab for everything else. So it really just goes back to those specific plan designs, and what it actually looks like. I just want to be able to provide you all with the framework of the things that you need to be looking for, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so some alternatives if you don't feel comfortable with any of the plan options that your employer provides. A lot of you all might be younger than 26. You are eligible to stay on your parents' health plan until you are 26. So maybe you do that. You say, okay, I don't like any of the options that my employer is providing. Let's say my family is still on the family tier. It doesn't cost them any more to have me on their plan, as long as I'm paying my deductible and co-insurance or whatever. So I'm going to do that. That's a completely perfect option. You can also look at maybe your spouse's plan or domestic partner if their employer allows for domestic partners to be on the plan. I would just caution you that sometimes this doesn't end up working out in your favor because some employers maybe exclude spouses. Some have a spousal surcharge. So let's say if your spouse has the ability to be on their own health insurance plan, okay, if they're on ours, we're charging them an extra for utilizing our plan since they had access to their own. So again, it really just goes back to what the specific employer has, and really educating yourselves on all of these provisions. I want to make sure that you are aware of these provisions, but it will be up to you to really analyze the specifics of what's in front of you once you receive that.
One quick comment / question is, as someone who is no longer 26, that plan, I've heard both, that either you're on the plan until the end of the month that you turn 26 or the end of the year you turn 26. I don't know which one is more common because I was born in December, so both were true. So I don't know if that's a
I don't know off the top of my head which one's more common, but they definitely both exist. I think it depends on just how generous the employer is.
Sure.
Those really generous employers will allow it to be for the full year, which is awesome. But some other ones that want to limit their dependent liability as soon as possible will say, nope, month you turn 26, you have to be off the plan.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to provide a couple of tools for you all to be smart consumers when choosing your health plan. So I know not everybody will end up choosing high deductible health plans, but I would strongly advise you to look at these, especially as generally younger, healthier people. And even if you're not, you don't have to be 100% healthy. You can still visit the doctor and benefit from a high deductible health plan. It's just generally people who utilize it less. So with the high deductible health plans and with any plan, but particularly these plans, it's designed to create smarter consumers. So a lot of the onus is on you to do your research and educate yourself, plan ahead and bundle on expenses, use your HSA, be really smart about what are qualified HSA expenses and really use that to your advantage. Maximize your HSA if possible, maximize your employer contribution, so no free money is left on the table if they contribute. And then there are some other good online comparison tools just to be a better consumer. There's GoodRx, which will help you compare prescription costs so you can find the cheapest prescription in your area. Same with Healthcare Blue Book, kind of like Kelly Blue Book. Same thing with MD Save and VHI. These are all just a couple of tools that you can use to be a better consumer. So feel free to check those out on your own time and as you navigate the healthcare system. So concluding thoughts before we spend the final couple minutes for questions. It's really important to view your benefits package holistically. because there are opportunities for negotiation. Your benefits package is a part of your total rewards package. The same way that you would negotiate your salary, you can negotiate your benefits to an extent. Or you can use it as a tool to negotiate some of the other parts of your total rewards package. So what I mean by this is, let's say you are taking advantage of the rule in which you can be on your parents' health insurance plan until you're 26. You are saving your employer a lot of money by them not having to pay part of the premium for your health insurance. They are saving a ton of money. So I would advise you and would recommend to use that as an opportunity to see if you can negotiate your salary or even a bonus. Say, hey, I know it costs employers several $1,000s a year to, insure their employees, and I'm not utilizing that money. Is there any way for me to see that in the form of a bonus or a salary? Bonus is more likely because eventually you will be older than 26 and have to join their plans. But just give it a shot. It's not always successful, but I've heard that it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. But there's no harm in trying. And if you're not impressed with your benefits, remember that your health insurance benefits are only a portion of your total rewards package. There's your compensation, salary, bonus, whatever benefits, but there's also retirement, 401k, your pension, your paid time off. That is invaluable. There's no substitute for paid time off. Flexible working, with COVID and being in a hybrid environment, maybe you can negotiate for that. Other ancillary benefits like life, accident, disability, auto, home, pet. There's others that are slipping my mind right now, but it's important to think about your total rewards package holistically, and not to think about it in silos, because even though we only focus really on health insurance today, and specifically medical insurance, we didn't even talk about dental or vision. It is just one singular puzzle piece of your entire job hunting experience. I guess we'll put it that way. So that is my final concluding thought before opening it up to questions. Although you guys have been very active in asking questions during the presentation, which I appreciate, so might not be any, but
one question I got that I think you touched on a little bit before when talking about comparing plans and what's best for you is really what are maybe one or two common mistakes that young people make, or what is easy to get tripped up on. I know you talked about the high deductible plans looking less, appealing, but I don't know if you had any other sort of things that people get tripped up on a lot.
Yeah, let me think. I would say, it's primarily overlooking the advantages of the high deductible health plan, and often not maximizing your spending account contributions, because your employer, like sometimes people will only, contribute $300 to their HSA when their employer is willing to maximize $500. And, obviously sometimes it's not always in people's budget to maximize their HSA, and that's completely understandable. But if it is within your budget, I would encourage people to maximize that, because I see that oftentimes, sometimes we'll look through reports from my clients, and we'll see like, wow, all of these people have HSAs open, but just aren't utilizing it. There's no dollars in there. They're just not taking advantage of it. So I would say, don't forget the HSA, and don't overlook the high deductible health plan.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see. Well, if there are no more questions for now, obviously, as we're live, there are no more questions, but if there's anyone who is watching this later who might have some questions, whether that they're watching it on YouTube or on our website, definitely drop a comment or reach out to us via email, and we can connect you. We're here to help. But definitely, talk to people and do your own research, those websites. But let us know. And we're really grateful, Maddie, that you took the time to present to us. Again, we'll have this posted up soon, so people can watch it after the fact. But thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much for your questions and engagement. And thanks Allison and RVA Now for hosting. I think I'm a firm believer in the value of learning about benefits. And, I remember being there. So I think it's great that you all are putting this on for the community. And I hope you all were able to take at least one thing away from this.
Yeah, I definitely did. So, and I'm already in I'm again, not 26 anymore. So, well, thank you so much. And everyone have a great afternoon.